Steven Robards' life seemed to be falling into place. He had recently married the woman he loved, and his teenage daughter, Marie, had just come to live with them. But in the winter of 1993, everything changed. One evening, the family sat down for an early dinner, tacos, Steven's favorite. He enjoyed every bite, thanked them, and then left for church. Just 2 hours later, he suddenly collapsed, struggling to breathe. An autopsy later concluded it was a simple heart attack. No warning signs, no prior health issues, nothing unusual. But what no one realized at the time was that his last meal might have played a deadly role. Marie Robards had grown up in what seemed like a normal life. Her parents, Steven and Beth, were high school sweethearts who married at just 18, and 2 years later, Marie was born into their young family.
But that kind of start doesn't always last. As Marie grew up, her parents' marriage began to fall apart. Steven struggled with depression, bouncing from job to job, and eventually the strain became too much. They divorced. Marie stayed with her mother Beth and only saw her dad every so often. Still, Steven never fully disappeared from her life. He'd served in the Navy, and despite his struggles, he tried to rebuild. Eventually, he found some stability, working as a mail carrier for the United States Postal Service, a job that he genuinely enjoyed. He was outdoors, moving, starting to feel like himself again. And he also met someone new, Sandra. And for the first time in a while, things seemed steady. Meanwhile, Marie was growing into a strong young woman who was hard to not take notice of. By the time she was 16, she was a straight-A student, driven, involved, and well-liked. She did well in school, stayed active in extracurriculars, and naturally drew attention. On the surface, she had everything going for her. But at home, things were shifting again. Beth had now remarried, and Marie didn't get along with her new stepfather. The tension built quietly but steadily until it became clear that something had to change. So Marie moved in with her dad, and for her, this wasn't a setback, it was something she was genuinely excited about. She wanted that time with him, and Steven did too. The two were kind of like two peas in a pod. They loved hanging out together. So this move was actually great for them both. By then, Steven's life looked different. He had a stable job, a bigger apartment in Fort Worth, and a sense that he was finally getting things back on track. And now, for the first time in years, he had the chance to really be a father to Marie, and he took it. The two of them settled into a rhythm. Marie got along well with Sandra, helped around the house, cooked for the family, especially Mexican food, one of Steven's favorites, and for a while, everything felt right. Like maybe this was how things were supposed to be. But it wouldn't last, because soon tragedy would come creeping in, and everything in Marie's life would change. It was February 17th, 1993, and it was a regular evening in the Robards family household. Steven had just had dinner, tacos made by his daughter, Marie, and he enjoyed every morsel of it, and he thanked Marie for making a delicious dinner before he headed out the door. See, he was due to attend a church service on that particular evening, but as soon as he got to the church, he started feeling unwell. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he just felt something was wrong. He was out of breath, he was in distress, and he just didn't feel good. Nonetheless, he managed to make it to the end of the church service, got home, but after that, things went downhill. Steven was getting worse. Sandra and Marie were both worried because as time went on, his condition wasn't getting better. Ultimately, Sandra decided to call 911 and an ambulance was dispatched. According to her, Steven was feeling very nauseous and he fell unconscious after a while. The ambulance was racing against the clock to reach the Robards' house, but tragically it was too late. Before the ambulance even got there, Steven had sadly passed away, and he was only 38 years old. Sandra and Marie were right beside him during his last moments, but nothing could have prepared them for the grief and the pain that was about to hit them head on. Because he was relatively young. His family did request an autopsy because up until this point, they had no idea what had even happened to him and how his health had declined to the point of crashing completely. Well, according to the autopsy results, Steven's cause of death was a heart attack. This came as a surprise for everyone because he'd never had heart complications before. But heart attacks can be pretty unexpected, and they can affect anyone regardless of your lifestyle or age. There was nothing malicious or nefarious in the autopsy. The medical examiner didn't find anything suspicious in his system, and everyone was just bereaved. Steven was young, yes, but death can be uncertain and unexpected, and it hardly ever comes with a warning. Naturally, Marie, Sandra, and even Steven's ex-wife Beth were all devastated. Sandra lost the love of her life, Marie lost her dad, and Beth had lost the father of her first child. The last thing Marie remembered about her dad was how happy he was when they were having dinner before he walked out that door and came back sick. She was only 16 when she lost her dad, and no child should ever have to go through that. Steven's death, it came as a devastating shock to everyone. Or did it? Since Marie didn't have her dad to live with anymore, living in Fort Worth was kind of difficult at this point, so she was sent to live with her grandparents. She had now just lost her dad, and now life as she knew it was never going to be the same again. She had to pack up everything and leave for Mansfield, Texas to live with her grandparents. She enrolled in Mansfield High School, and her transition was relatively easy for her. She was very smart, and even though she was going through a rough and unexpected patch in her life, she threw herself into her studies to keep herself busy. She ultimately graduated from high school and went on to attend the University of Texas to study pre-med. She wanted to become a pathologist, and in order to aid her studies, she used the money she got from her dad's life insurance policy payout, which was about $60,000 to be exact. It's heartbreaking that Steven wasn't there to witness his daughter graduate from high school and get into a good university and pursue her major. But even after his passing, Steven was a major stepping stone in Marie's life. His insurance payout helped Marie achieve her dreams. But you might be wondering, if Steven's passing was accidental and purely medical, well, what are we doing here? This is a true crime channel. Well, things were not what they seemed, and detectives were able to figure this out firsthand because Steven's passing was not accidental, and they knew it. Now, his autopsy states that he passed away of a heart attack, which came out of the blue. But was that really the truth? Just a second ago, I mentioned that death doesn't come with a warning. But what if it did in Steven's case, and he just didn't see it? What if someone close to Steven was sporting that warning label? The police thought this too, and unbeknownst to everyone who knew Steven, the police were busy looking into his untimely passing. They were certain there was something fishy about his death. They knew it was not accidental. They just had to prove it. About a year after Steven lost his life, the police were approached by someone. It was a woman by the name of Stacy High. She'd come to the police because of a very peculiar incident that had occurred. It had to do with a scene in Hamlet, a classic William Shakespeare play. You might be thinking, where does Hamlet come into all of this, and who is Stacy? Well, according to Stacy, she was reading a particular line in Hamlet when she looked up at the person next to her and saw said person in tears and hysteria. Here Stacy was just admiring the lines written by this literature magician, and suddenly she saw someone bawling their eyes out. So who was this person in tears? Well, it was Stacy's best friend from Mansfield High School, Marie Robards, Steven's daughter. But why was she crying? Well, after Steven's passing, you already know that Marie went on to live with her grandparents in Mansfield, and she enrolled in a new high school. She immediately clicked with another girl by the name of Stacy High, and the two were really good friends until the end. They had a lot in common. They worked really well together, and there was never a dull moment between the two. Well, during their senior year, they were required to read William Shakespeare's play, Hamlet, for an English class project. So the two got together and they started reading the play. As Stacy got to a scene in Act 3, when King Claudius was agonizing over how to repent after murdering his brother, Stacy was in awe over the writing, and she looked up at Marie to comment over this part of the story when she noticed Marie being very emotional. But then the weirdest thing happened. Totally unprovoked, Marie asked Stacy if she believed it was possible, quote, for a person to not have a conscience. This question was out of the blue for Stacy. She didn't know how to answer that, but something in Marie's eyes told her she'd been hiding something for a very long time. Within minutes, Marie broke down and confessed to her best friend, who's a high schooler, mind you, that she had done something really bad. Now,
up until then, Stacy's idea of doing something bad was pretty typical, maybe sneaking out or getting involved with a boy. She was just a high school student, so her perspective made sense. But she was completely unprepared for what Marie was about to say when she asked what she'd done. You'd expect anything except murder. Yet that's exactly what Marie confessed.
She confessed to her unsuspecting best friend that she had murdered her own father a year ago. Steven's death was not accidental. He was poisoned by someone, and that someone was his own daughter, 16-year-old Marie. Stacy was completely floored. She did not expect something like this. Marie, a straight-A model student who'd never done anything wrong in her life, had confessed to doing the unthinkable. Seems like her perfect image was only a facade, and this just proves that straight A's can be a trauma response too, because the perfect model student, Miss Goody Two-Shoes, was responsible for her own father's untimely death. Well, little did Marie know, Stacy would be the one to implicate her to the authorities, because why wouldn't she? This was something serious. The whole town knew of Steven's untimely passing, and everyone was shocked and in disbelief that it was a heart attack. Well, it turns out it wasn't. Steven's own daughter was the cause of his passing. Stacy got to the police station, and she told the officers everything. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this before or not, but Steven's case was still under investigation at this point. The police were very suspicious of the circumstances under which Steven had passed away. They were looking for that smoking gun, which they were unable to find a year into his passing. But now, they finally had it, in the form of Stacy's statement. When the police heard that it was Marie who was responsible for his passing, they were just as shocked as everyone. The last person anyone would have suspected was Marie. The police were looking into the people closest to Steven, but his 16-year-old daughter was not on their radar at all. So to say that this was a revelation to them would be an understatement. But the police still wanted to know how Marie had planned all of this, and luckily, she had told Stacy everything, like she was some sort of human diary. According to Stacy, Marie was in chemistry class once, and the students were in a lab when their teacher pulled out a white powder-like substance that's extremely dangerous if ingested. This chemical can cause a decline in the body's natural potassium levels, which is essential for the heart, and it can also cause a variety of symptoms like nausea, stomach aches, and heart issues. Exactly the same things Steven experienced before he couldn't be saved. Marie was extremely fascinated by this substance ever since her teacher warned the students that it was highly toxic and should never be ingested. But Marie was already hatching a plan. She stole some of the poison from the lab when no one was looking, and she stuffed it in her bag. You hear of people going to great lengths to get their hands on shady and toxic substances, and here you have Marie conveniently stealing a literal toxin from her high school chemistry class. To give you an idea of the timeline, she stole this compound from her chemistry lab about a week before Steven's passing. So this already reeks of premeditation. She had 7 days, hundreds of hours, to pull back from her plan, but she didn't, because she had murder on her mind. If you remember, on the fateful day of Steven's passing, it was Marie who fixed dinner for everyone, and she decided to make tacos for her dad. Turns out she laced her dad's plate with the powder. It was later found out that the amount of poison in those tacos was almost 28 times the lethal dose, tragically cementing Steven's fate. Marie was right by her dad's side, emotionless and cold as he ate the tacos happily. The tacos that he knew his daughter made special for him. They were one of his favorite things. Marie knew that it was just a matter of time before Steven's condition would deteriorate, and she was unfortunately right. Steven lost his life a couple hours later, and Marie, the person who gave her dad the laced food, was right there seeing everything go down. Sandra was horrified when Steven started to act weirdly and wasn't getting any better, and Marie just sat there, waiting for everything to reach a tragic end. Not once did she try to help or come clean about what she had done. Stacy was forced to promise to keep her lips zipped by Marie, but her conscience won in the end. Because best friend or not, she couldn't sit there and pretend like she didn't know the greatest detail in her best friend's dad's passing. So she told the police everything from start to finish. But the police were now left with one serious question. Why did Marie want her father gone? What could have happened between the two that led to such an escalation? Well, the police were busy digging up several pieces of evidence, and the one very crucial thing they needed to confirm was whether Marie had stolen that compound from the school's lab. When the school checked the lab and the manual of chemicals, a page was missing in the manual that usually had everything about a certain compound written on it. And can you take a wild guess which compound's page was missing? Well, now that the police knew that Marie had stolen the substance from the chemistry lab, they needed to figure out one final thing: its levels in Steven's body at the time of his passing. If you remember, Steven's autopsy didn't show any suspicious information. And that's because for a compound like this, there are special tests that are conducted.
Because the poison used couldn't be detected in a routine autopsy, it was initially missed. But once suspicions grew, investigators ordered specialized testing. Using advanced analysis, they found clear evidence of a toxic substance in Steven's body, enough to confirm it caused his sudden death. With that proof, police moved in and arrested Marie Robards. At the time, Marie was attending university in Austin. When confronted, she showed little emotion. Eventually, during questioning, she confessed. She claimed she never meant to kill her father, only to make him sick so she could leave and live with her mother. The motive shocked everyone. There was no abuse, no major conflict, just her desire not to stay with him. Ironically, her plan failed. After Steven's death, her mother moved away and refused to take her in. Marie ended up living with relatives, finishing school, and trying to move on as if nothing had happened. In 1995, her trial drew major attention. Despite pleading not guilty and insisting she didn't intend to kill, she was convicted and sentenced to 27 years in prison. The case divided public opinion. Some saw a troubled teenager, others a calculated killer. But the story didn't end there. In 2003, after serving only about 9 years, Marie was released on parole. Today, she lives under a new identity, free, after a decision that forever changed her family's life over something as simple as not wanting to live with her father.